Hello, and welcome back to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne. It's October 16th, and we are just 4 days away from the start of Health 2024 in Las Vegas. So today, we are finishing our 3-part series focused on the theme of this year's conference, which is Be Bold. Joining me in the conversation about what it means to be bold in health marketing is Michelle Ryder. Michelle is an award-winning, highly respected marketing executive and board leader who brings 30 years of experience leading transformative growth for some of the nation's most innovative and technologically forward healthcare brands. She's led marketing for organizations like Teladoc and Amazon Health, and she was recently named one of the top 50 women to watch for board roles by 50/50 Women on Boards. What a privilege to have you on the show, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd like to start off, Michelle, with your point of view on what it means or what it takes to be bold in marketing today in the health industry.
That is a really good question. I like what it takes versus what it means, because that's really subjective. I guess what it takes is as well, but I think it takes tenacity, it takes tough skin, it takes a willingness to look even outside of your industry for inspiration and to listen to new ideas and then apply those in a bold and daring way. And so not being afraid is very much in line with what it takes.
I love that. And I love what you said about, looking outside of the industry for new ideas as well. I think where the industry is at, we certainly are in need of borrowing ideas of what works from other parts, whether it's the retail sector, the technology sector. I think we're seeing a lot of interesting growth and sort of merging of those industries inside of health. I'm curious, Michelle, I'd love for you to give some examples of some health companies that you believe are really sort of setting the bar when it comes to being bold with their marketing. What companies come to mind for you?
So I'm biased to Amazon Health, and I know that I work there, and I help lead the start of Amazon Care, which is available today. But Amazon really takes the model of, if you think about Amazon Prime and having what you need instantly available to you or available within a couple of days, not weeks, not months, like you're used to in the healthcare industry. And then they surround their healthcare offering with what the consumer needs. So you're using algorithms, you're using the information that the consumer can give you. And when I say consumer, I mean patient or member, can give you asynchronously. And then Amazon Care marries that and provide healthcare solutions that are almost instantaneous. So that is different. It's bold, it's different, and it is a slow take, but it is, I believe, going to work, and it's more and more what the consumer / member / patient demands.
I mean, obviously, Amazon is going to be leading in a lot of areas when it comes to being bold. I think we've seen that from them in almost everything that they do. And, a lot of what you spoke to is sort of the go-to-market strategy in the offering. And how does that then translate to what they're doing from a marketing perspective? Obviously, you're not on the inside anymore, so you don't know it with, that much sort of inside perspective. I'm just curious, what's your take on how to apply that boldness from a marketing perspective?
And not just with Amazon, but I think any company focused on digital health or healthcare. So where it translates, and we may get into this later, but it's taking the use of AI. And so everyone talks about AI as if it's some new concept. But I would say for the past 15 years, I've integrated AI into a marketing strategy. And really it is taking like the information you know about the consumer / patient, using those pain points, and then serving content and information in a way that's relevant to them in the language that they understand. And so technology plays a huge role in those healthcare companies where you see that they are making bold moves and bold strides in marketing today.
I love that. And I think you're right. I think we should dive deeper into that later on in the conversation and go a little bit deeper around AI. But you're absolutely right. I mean, consumers want things that are going to be customized to them and relevant to them, right? So it's the way that they're communicated, either by channel or by message, customizing that. As well as making suggestions to them, customizing the type of education that they might need based on behaviors, based on conditions,
Right.
all of those types of things. You've been with a lot of organizations, you've advised a lot of organizations. What mistakes do you see companies making, and what advice do you have for other marketing leaders when it comes to this notion of being bold?
That's a really good question. I think, mistakes that I see and mistakes that I've made personally, I don't mind being vulnerable. Getting and wrapped in the status quo, healthcare is really easy to do that. And the reason for that is, so you have the regulatory and all of the, the rules that we have to play under as a marketer. And those don't change fast or quickly. And then you have the patient slash member that their expectations and what they're getting from other industries and other places are changing and what they're able to get. And then there's this lack of understanding from a leadership, sometimes lack of understanding on the patient that they serve, diversity, really understanding how to use AI ethically, and then how to communicate. And so the mistakes you can make as a marketer is sort of playing safe because it works and really playing under the rules and not looking deeper into, yes, we have these CMS guidelines, but how do we push the envelope and how do we act in favor of the patient in following those guidelines? So risk, I think healthcare is still, especially from like on a payer or health system side, is pretty much risk averse. And then you have these up and coming cool digital companies that you'll see at health, which are pushing the envelope, that are, they're younger, they understand the, the speed in which the patient needs to be served. And so how do you marry those two? And the mistake you can make is I believe playing it too safe and not really taking those chances. And if I can, I'll give you an example of this. So
yeah,
I worked at Aetna, and I was leading their services for individual people that purchase individual insurance. And my partners were with like AARP, but also like Costco and Bank of America. And it was a really, really great role. And part of my job was selecting the type of vendors that Aetna would offer to these individuals. And this little company called Teladoc had approached us about like this concept of telemedicine. And I remember the hard nose that I got, initially when thinking about bringing Teladoc into our fold and a service offering for patients. And I remember fighting for that and really talking about when you're serving an individual and how they really, if they're paying their own premium, if you think about it, they're wanting what they want from healthcare. And healthcare is not always about just being sick. It's also about being well, and it's about convenience and about the other things that they were getting in the market. And so through lots and lots of meetings and lots of convincing, we were able to bring Teladoc on as a vendor, as an offering for Aetna consumers or patients that were purchasing their own health plans. When the following year, when we lost Obamacare, the contract in which was paying like most of my salary, because it was all about like providing these individual offerings, went away. So I was like going to have to change jobs within Aetna and take a new job. But there was an opening at Teladoc for a leader on their marketing side. And I decided to take a bold move and go into like this unknown, sort of, to me, unknown digital space of offering telemedicine. And that's how I ended up at Teladoc.
Oh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. And then how things changed so rapidly with the pandemic
It
and
changed.
you know, uh,
Yes.
really embracing more of that virtual care, telemedicine visits and whatnot. I wanted to go back to what you said about customer insights, consumer
Yes.
insights. However we want to frame that. I think you're right that a lot of organizations don't put enough emphasis there, right?
Mhm.
There are assumptions made of, we know our audience, or sometimes there just isn't budget available to
Yeah.
do more in-depth market
Right.
research that would
Right.
lead to these,
Mhm.
transformative insights that could really change either your go-to-market strategy or your marketing
Mhm.
strategy, and from a messaging standpoint, from a really understanding the persona and what makes them tick. And do you have any thoughts, Michelle, on how to prioritize that work and that budget?
Yeah.
Either from past roles that you've been in,
Mhm.
or boards that you sit on. Do you
Mhm.
advocate for, hey, we really need to step back here and make sure we really understand how the customer views this offering or what they want?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I've done in my past. One is it's really important to incorporate a feedback loop. So the best
Mm,
way to learn about your customer, but also like sort of how they're thinking or thinking ahead and whether or not you're serving them well and their needs is to incorporate feedback and really trying to do that at like point of care or really soon after point of
mm,
care. So one is using feedback, and I'll give an example of that and how I've done that in a second. The other is just, I mean, there is so much information out there. It's really not a mystery. So I am a huge fan of AI, and I use it very much so in my day-to-day role. So even as a board member, so you have to fact check AI, and so not everything that you
yeah.
say is true. But if you can like master the art of prompt engineering and how to ask the questions, you can at least get directional information that can take you down like further opportunities for research. And so if you think about like large language models, like that information is being pulled from all different sources. So you're just one person, you're trying to figure out how to incorporate like sort of insights and how to convince your team about how to use those insights. So getting that information, getting it in one place, getting it in, much quicker than the months and months it would traditionally take, is, I think, a smart and bold move for a marketer. And if marketers aren't using AI today, they should be. But so I would say asking customers for feedback and really designing well-written surveys that get to those answers, aggregating that information, and then using data in order to convince leaders to incorporate insights as part of the strategy. And then I would say every marketing strategy that I've ever presented always has KPIs and always has so because then it becomes easier and easier to convince boards leadership of your ideas when you can prove your point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the very practical examples you gave there on ways to get better insights about your
Mhm.
customers and know how
Mhm.
to serve them better. I love this feedback loop as close to the point of care as possible and cost effective in terms of leveraging AI,
Right.
right? Probably
Mhm.
an untapped opportunity there. Recently did an episode with a market research expert, Dan Riley, and he was talking about the same thing. There are points in time where we can certainly be leveraging AI. It's
Mhm.
going to have its limitations, to your point,
Right.
but let's make sure we're going up to those limitations, all the way up to
Exactly.
gaining as much as we possibly can, because it's going to not only make you smarter, but it's going to save you money potentially on questions you're going to ask or the approach that you're going to take if you need to go then to more deeper insights from a market research perspective.
I recently had to, so I was trying to look at nurses, and I was looking at like sort of Medicare and Medicaid, and the different rules per state. And then I was looking
Mm,
at how to reach nurses, and all the different ways. So there's like the schools, the associations, um, the teaching institutions. And I had like all this data, like, and even more than that, but just to make this quick. And I remembering about AI, and I put all of this data that I had into the model, and I said, make me a chart that
mm,
like organizes this information, pull out the key insights from this data, and provide a summary. So again, I would have probably taken like days and days and days of looking back and forth, opening different documents, trying to create my own pivot tables and spreadsheets. And instead I took 30 minutes. And so I always just remember AI. So this in that case, I had the facts. I had
yeah,
them, I had our own data that we had. I had some CMS data. I had some Medicare, Medicaid data. I had names of universities, and I had all of this information that were all factual, individual, and was able to put that together and presented it as if I had been spending weeks on it.
yeah. No, such a great time saver. And I'm glad you provided that specific example. I'm curious, was it ChatGPT or another tool that you used specifically on that project?
So I use ChatGPT, but I also use Gemini, and I try to use different, and it depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm writing, like if I'm doing content, I may like use a couple of different tools, but I use ChatGPT. That's sort of my easiest and favorite for that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I always love to compare notes with people on what they're using and sort of the latest because this is moving all so quickly, right? And what they can do, their capabilities is rapidly changing. I'm glad you brought up KPIs. So
Hmm.
critically important,
Hmm.
obviously.
Okay.
I read a recent Ad Age article that
Hmm.
highlighted the increasing pressures that chief marketing officers are facing from their CEOs, from their CFOs to deliver quick, measurable results,
Hmm.
often with limited resources, right? It's the classic
Yeah.
pressure for
Right.
better, faster,
Oh, like, is
cheaper.
that new? Because
I know, I know. You're absolutely right. I'm like, yep, saw the headline. I'm like, yeah, we've been talking about this for quite some time. But the interesting perspective that they brought in is that performance marketing has really changed the way the marketing is perceived because it's like the point of view in the article was like, well, if this is called performance marketing, is this non-performance marketing over here? Like if we're looking at
Mhm,
digital and we're looking at metrics and we can
mhm,
see the definitive ROI, then is this
mhm.
not performing? And it's that whole juxtaposition of things like brand building and brand awareness and top of
Right,
funnel stuff. It's a
right,
longer
exactly.
term play, and the
But
C suite is having a harder time understanding that and continuing to see the value in it. And so you're right, it's not new, but I think there's sort of an additional um, trend that's at play here, which is this juxtaposition of performance marketing versus other in brand building, et cetera. What's your perspective on that, on this subject of being bold? How
mhm.
can CMOs maintain a bold approach in light of these challenges, and this expectation for better, faster, cheaper?
Yeah, that's all. I mean, I feel like that's been like a career long question. And so here's my tricks, or my perspective is, one, I mean, marketers have to get used to, I mean, performance marketing is not going away, and it's going to continue. I would say with digital marketing, it's a lot easier, I think, than most people think. And I also believe that in setting KPIs, it's important to, first of all, set them early, but also measure everything. So get credit for everything. So you're going to mix in the hard data. So how many I don't know, how many customers can you engage? How many people use the service? How many contracts did we sign with other healthcare organizations? So that's the hard data, and some of those are long tail, but you
Yeah.
can measure the in between to always demonstrate your value as a marketer. So the in betweens are, so your traditional like reach, impressions, how website visits, how many people are downloading your content. And then what my take is that you get really good at measuring those in between insights, is what I call them. And then you get really good at measuring, taking the outcome, the whatever that KPI is, and attributing it to the in between activities.
Mm.
And so then you're showing, here's the outcome, but in order for me to continue to be successful, I need to double down on these in between activities that I demonstrated fed the outcome. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
it works, because then you also, so when you're talking about budgeting and when you get to that point, you're like, okay, I know that doing customer webinars and display ads and LinkedIn targeted ads, I know that that combination results in Y. And so therefore, my budget needs to double down on display ads, and I need to drive more people to the website by doing XYZ. Oh, and I measured those. And last year we did, we spent $10,000 on this. And so this year, in order to get, the 2X that you're asking for, I need to do more of these in between activities. So I KPI everything. And then I really look for those opportunities to attribute growth, to attribute outcomes to those, what would be seen individually, non-essential KPIs that, a board or CEO would care about.
Yeah, I love that. This overlay, right? Or layering effect of all of the different, you're calling it the in-between insights in addition to the harder
Right.
KPIs, and drawing those correlations, those attributions. When we do this, we see this. And if you
Right.
want this times, X amount,
Mhm.
whatever it is, then I need this times X amount. Love
Right.
that. And I think you're absolutely right. And all of us in marketing can do a better job of exactly that. And I
Right.
think sometimes the challenge is that the teams that are responsible for some of these things are siloed. And so it does take
Yes.
a strong CMO
Mhm.
to provide this vision and direction for how those KPIs are going to be rolled up, and so that the organization is in concert producing the right kind of metrics and insights that are going to support that overall story that we want to tell.
Yeah. That it's right on. And I think we spend a lot of time, you're right, with the silo, but we spend a lot of times with just the outcome, right? And so it's just my digital campaign, drove 10 leads, or, and it's just that piece. But the consumer, the going back to insights, or the buyer or the patient, or if you're B2B, the businesses that you're trying to attract as a healthcare organization, they are very complex, and a lot of times there's multiple people involved in that process. So if you're not measuring, and their interaction with the company may come from interaction with the call center, it may come from
Right.
interaction, on site. And so if you're not like measuring that and pulling that all in as a marketer, you're sort of doing yourself a disfavor, because you're also then not able to defend your marketing strategy, because you're only able to defend the things that you showed as the outcome versus showing the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. As you and I have talked in previous conversations, I know that you are someone who really believes in stretching marketing beyond that one campaign or that
Mm.
point in
Yes.
time. And this is
Yeah.
something that you advise very heavily on in your
Mhm.
board positions.
Yes.
What advice do you have specifically on this concept of stretching marketing beyond that one point in time?
Do it. So, but,
Love it. You heard it here, folks. Just do it.
yeah, like every role that I have and every opportunity I do, I always do that. And you can do it. So I have this concept, I call it from 0 to 90. And basically, it is so you have a marketing campaign or a strategy or something that you are launching, and then you think about it for in the next 90 days. Think about the target audience and then multiple ways that they will come into contact with you, your campaign, the strategy that you're trying to employ. And then you will think about all of the different touch points. And as you do that exercise, and try not to think about it only in terms of what you can do, but in terms of how they are going to interact with you. And then what I try to do is I say, okay, we're doing a webinar. We did a webinar on this day. So if I think about like the CIO, for example, and all of the different things that a CIO does, then I'll say like he golfs, he goes to the movies, he has a family. Like I think about all of the different things, not just a CIO at a healthcare company.
Yeah.
And then I say, he also is important. His reputation is important. I'm just thinking about a project I just did. And I say, okay, so if I'm going to invite the top CIOs, but instead of just doing this webinar, I'm going to invite them to provide quotes during the webinar and be on camera. And I'm going to let them know that we're going to publish those quotes and we're going to promote them following the webinar. So are you okay with that? And they're good. Like a CEO doesn't get a lot of media attention. So they're good with that. So, and also, could we ask your PR team if we can mention you in a press release? So see the stretch. Okay.
Yeah.
Some are going to say yes. Also, we would love to do a blog because your take was really interesting. We'd like to do a blog on you during XX month, something till we give another a point in time reason. And we're going to publish that 2 months from now. Are you good with that? And would you mind mentioning the blog on your on your health at your healthcare site, or would your marketing team want to also publish this blog on your wherever they publish? So the stretch. And then we'd love to invite you back to talk to our customers next year about your insights because they were so impactful. The stretch. Would you like to invite any of your customers to come to the webinar when you come? Yes, the stretch. So I just exhaust and I just try and campaigns. I hate campaigns that just are one and done because there's so much opportunity. So I just create all this content from that. And I didn't even think about it, but I keep going back to ChatGPT. I should just put all of that in and see what else.
Yeah. Say, what am I forgetting?
Right.
Here's what we did. Here's where we
Right.
started. Here's what we did. Help me stretch this even further. What am I forgetting?
Right.
I love that. So great.
Your engagement. I used you apply to the human piece of it.
Ego.
And
We all have that,
right.
and
then there's nothing like what you do. It's I'm sure you talk to a lot of marketers, but everybody has a slightly different take. So you're bringing it the best insights that are individual to that person, but it hopefully gives someone else, something that they can use. And that's what I do with our customers.
Yeah, I think sometimes brands, companies are afraid to ask their customers to participate in some of these things because our customers are busy. Everybody's busy.
Right.
But I think sometimes we're overlooking this what's really in it for them. This isn't really about the brand.
Right.
Right. It is about allowing them to be a champion, allowing them to be a thought leader and elevating their profile. And everybody loves that. And so really leaning into that and not being afraid to, approaching them in the right way, which is here's what's in it for you,
right,
and making it easy for them.
Right.
Very rarely do people say no. I
Yeah.
find in what I
I
do,
find
people
that
don't say
that
no. And when they do say no, it's because they've got some strict corporate,
exactly.
policy.
Right.
Can't, but otherwise
Mhm.
people are like, yeah, sure, I'd love to.
Right. But and to your point, and it is because Amazon, I could like never just speak without like without asking PR. But the thing is though, also you have individuals that have their own brand too. So there's other like you can too mention that person that's under the strict and they still have their own brand, so you can still like call them out and you don't necessarily have to associate it with their company, but when someone looks up that person of authority, they're going to see where they work, and so then that just lends more credibility.
I love that. I feel like this conversation has really, come the full spectrum of, being bold can be new ideas and tenacity and being daring, but being bold can also be smaller things, which is
Being scrappy.
being scrappy, don't underutilize AI for analyzing your data and helping you present it in new and interesting, compelling ways to your C-suite. And really this concept of the stretch. And really taking that to the limits of how do we stretch this so far? Is it
Right.
going to break at some point? I don't think
Yes,
so. I
I
think
love that. How do you
platform,
stretch
right?
it so far it's going to break? I love it. That's exactly right.
Well, before we conclude, I'd like to switch gears for a quick fire segment. I've got 4 questions for you, Michelle. First one is, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
This is gonna sound crazy. I love to cook and I'd like to
Ooh.
watch true mysteries. So
There
like
are a lot of people out there who are in that camp with you.
I love it.
The true
I
crime
love
stuff. Yeah,
hmm
really hot. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Okay, here it is. So it is and it's a quote. And I don't know who the quote is from, but it's fake confidence looks like real confidence. So show up because no one knows the difference anyway.
Mm, love that. Everybody experiences imposter syndrome, even
Yeah.
people at the top. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's the old fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. What advice would you give other women who are interested in serving on boards?
Oh, yeah. So so here's my little spell. So today, 30% of women are in corporate board roles, but only 8% of them are women of color. And there still is this long stretch in terms of getting on a board. So I would say for all women, for me, I think it's visibility. So being visible, being bold, being on LinkedIn, telling your story, it's showing up. So if you are interested in a board and you know like the type of board you want to be on, there are lots of ways to be considered. So one is volunteering to be part of the advisory board, getting to know corporate board directors. If you have a particularly good relationship with a CEO, letting that CEO know that you want to be on boards. Now, a lot of us don't have that. We don't know the CEO personally, but there's other ways. So following the companies and commenting on what the CEO says or what the corporate board director says, and then following up with your own content and your own brand, you will start to get noticed. And I implore everyone to consider being on a board. It's an honor to help govern companies.
I love that. Yeah, we've got to get those representation numbers up. The 30% has to go up. The 8% has to go up.
Yeah,
And I love what you said about sometimes we got to ask, right?
we
We
just
might not always have the connections, but you know what? Somebody does. And
yeah.
so the more we make it known that that's what our interest is, I find people are willing to help people. They're not, you know what I mean? They're going to do what they can to help you out, and they're going to expect the same in return. And so that's going to get out there into the world. The more asks we make, the more it's going to get out there into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Last question, Michelle, what does professional development look like for you these days?
For me, it's podcasts and podcasts. And so, like right now, I have had a lot of leadership roles, but right now, for me, my quest is to be on a corporate board. So I'm spending a lot of time doing corporate board governance training. I was recently named, I think you said this, one of the top 50 women to watch for 50 women on boards for corporate boards. So my development is all around becoming board ready. But in doing that, and even just as a marketer in that craft, there is just so much to learn every day. And every day there are great podcasts like yours that people can listen to. And you always get a nugget. You get some nugget by just like listening to other people. And so I would recommend, finding great podcast, always learning, always focus on your professional development, take that course, take that chance, because you never know where that's going to lead you.
Love that. Do you have any favorite podcasts that you would recommend to others, aside from the true crime ones, of course, but more in the marketing leadership space?
Okay. So a couple are social media marketing. It's like this quick 5-minute, always gives you like the latest tools. So you were asking me about like AI models and different models that you can use. So it's really great at giving those type of tools. So I learned about Iterable from that podcast, and that's a great CRM tool. I also like a podcast called The C-Suite. And so it really gives that perspective from like the C-suite sort of to the expectations of being in the C-suite and how to succeed. And then there's another one called 5-Minute Marketing, which I really like because that's good for walks. And I usually only have about 5 minutes to listen to anything. But those are some of my favorites.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll have to check some of those out. A couple of those are new for me. Well, Michelle, I really appreciate you being here today. And I wanted to put a little plug out there. Anybody who's looking for a new board member, contact Michelle. And to that point, Michelle, how can listeners get in contact with you, Michelle?
Oh, very easy. They can they can find me on LinkedIn. I answer all of my LinkedIn messages. So it's Michelle J. Ryder. Also, my email is rydermichelle@gmail.com.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, folks. Be sure to reach out to Michelle, follow her on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, do us a favor and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That's it for today. Thanks to all of you for being part of the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. We're looking forward to seeing you in Las Vegas next week. Take care, everybody.